4, 3, 2, 1. Hey, Shagheads! Welcome to another episode of the Curtis Tucker Podcast. Shags here, your host, your storyteller, your 70s guy. Appreciate you guys checking in. If you guys are watching on YouTube, you can see me waving at you. Don't forget, you can listen to the podcast on your favorite podcasting apps if you're driving, doing dishes, out mowing the lawn, or out on the trail. If you guys are listening out on the trail, mowing the lawn, or driving, don't forget that if you want to see what's going on, if you want to see Shaggy Duck Studio in the background, go to youtube.com/@CurtisTucker and you'll be able to see me waving at you. And I'm trying to give slightly different views, so it's not the same thing every week. Eventually, I will give you guys a tour of the new, improved, cleaned up Shaggy Duck Studio before I get it all messy again. But right now, here is Shaggy Duck Studio behind me. So don't forget to hit me up at shags@shaggyduck.com or curtis@curtistucker.com. Send me an email. Let me know if somebody's out there. Somebody listening? Hello? Hello? Anybody out there? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah, I would love to get a little bit of feedback, or leave me feedback on the YouTube channel, or leave me a review on one of the podcasting platforms. And don't forget to subscribe to both the YouTube channel and your favorite podcasting app so I can get more subscribers, because that really helps me out and helps everything grow. Tonight's podcast episode is all about another podcast, which is the 70's Buzz podcast. So I thought I would do, I had a little blog post on the curtistucker.com blog about the 70's Buzz podcast, and I think I did it in like maybe 2022. So it really needed updated, but I didn't have a podcast episode to go with it. So this will be my podcast episode to go with it. And I'm doing this because it is a special occasion, and it's kind of fun because I'd kind of forgotten all of the things that happened to create the 70's Buzz podcast. It's kind of a funky little story of how that all came about. So the special occasion is between now and next week. So before next week's 70's Buzz podcast and before next week's Curtis Tucker podcast, the 70's Buzz podcast will have reached 1 million downloads. And so that's, I thought that was pretty cool. I thought it would be a good time to give my perspective of the 70's Buzz podcast, give you guys a little history of where I kind of remember it coming from. A little bit of what I say could be slightly wrong or a little bit of out of order, but I try to go through files and my photos and everything. And my daughter is texting me, of course, in the middle of my podcast, but I will text her later. Okay, so I'm going to kind of give you guys a history of the 70's Buzz podcast and some information and all that stuff. So sit back and hear a tale of a tiny podcast. I grew up in Enid, Oklahoma, and basically the entire time that I was a kid was from 1970 to 1980. So I am a true child of the 70's. Todd as well grew up in Enid in the 70's. And then my other 4 buddies all lived on West Broadway. And so the 5 of us all grew up and ran around with each other all throughout the mid 1970s. And that's where I really have some of my best memories of the 70's and Enid, Oklahoma. And so I've always thought that was such a cool time, and I've got stories and memories of that time that I've always wanted to tell those stories. So basically left Enid, got jobs, blah, 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 blah. Fast forward all the way to 2003 when I started having kids and was working for my father-in-law, and the internet had kind of come along, and I started figuring out how to make money online. So I quit my job, went to work for myself in 2003, had both girls. They were they were 17 months apart. So one was newborn, the other one was just over 1. And so I was taking care of them here, actually at this house that I'm at right now, where Shaggy Deck Studio is. And is that where I started? Nope. Actually, it was over on Seneca. So started over on Seneca, and one of the ways that I decided to make money back in the early 2000s was I was making money doing cartoon logos, but then I was also making money with AdSense and affiliate marketing and advertising on my websites. And at that point, I thought, well, if I make some money on one website, I could make more money on 100 websites. So my job became to do cartoon logos part of the day and then build 100 websites the other part of the day. And blogging had kind of really taken off about that point. So I thought, okay, I'm going to not only do websites, but I'm also going to do a couple of blogs. And so two of the blogs that I did, one of them was curtistucker.com and the other was enidbuzz.com. And I purchased curtistucker.com in June of 2004, and the intent there was to blog about being a stay-at-home dad, being an entrepreneur, growing up in the 70's, and just talking about raising my kids at home. So I started that blog on curtistucker.com, and I would tell stories of growing up in Enid in the 70's in blog form. And then around 2005, I heard about podcasting, and so I recorded a couple of podcasts and I uploaded them. I think at that time Apple Music was letting you upload them. So I uploaded like maybe 3 or 4 podcasts, and it was just me talking. I don't think there was really any subject. And so I uploaded them, and they sat on the internet for a couple of decades, but I stopped because podcasting had not taken off in 2005. It was getting started, and there were people that started podcasting and stayed with it, but there just wasn't enough interest in it. And I was making more money with blogging and websites, and this was even before social media even really took off. But so anyway, I kind of quit doing the podcasting, but at least I had messed with it and I knew what it was. I knew how to do it. I knew how to get an episode up to where people could listen to it. So had that in the back of my mind. And then fast forward, we're going to go way forward. And then around 2014, by then I had started Enid Buzz as my full-time business, and I was no longer doing the 100 websites or cartoon logos. I was just doing Enid Buzz, which I kind of started full-time in 2013. And by 2014, I was looking for some different things to add to Enid Buzz because it was really taking off and it was getting popular. And I thought, how else can I, and I was doing it full time at that point, and I thought, what else would be fun? Because I kind of thought of Enid Buzz as more like a TV station and not like a newspaper. People thought I was kind of competing with a newspaper, but I was really kind of like Enid's kind of mini online TV station. And so I decided to do a video show, and I called it E-Talk. And I called Todd because he had done a show with another guy way back in the day, Screamer Theater, which they had videoed, and then they would upload it to a local station. So I knew he didn't mind getting in front of a camera, and he and I were hanging out anyway. And I think he'd been helping me do some Enid Buzz stuff. So we started E-Talk, which was a video talk show where we interviewed people, but we decided to make it, I wanted kind of this urban feel, so we hooked up with 580 Coffee Shop, and we would go in the middle of the day and we would film and record e-talk while people were there clinking dishes and walking behind us and in front of us and all that. And I kind of liked that vibe. And so that was the first show that we did. And so we got that going and did that for quite a while. And then I also started doing a radio show in the morning with Alan Klepper in the morning on KOFM. And I basically would go in the morning, early in the morning, and then I think I'd stay about 20 or 30 minutes and we'd talk about what was going on in town. And I was doing that. I was going to do it every morning, every weekday morning, but he had told another guy that he could come in on Wednesday. So I did Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Fridays. And I would go in, it was kind of an Enid Buzz show, but he and I would just kind of banter back and forth in the morning and talk about news of the day and all that. But that kind of got me thinking about radio. I thought, oh, that's kind of cool to have a local radio morning show because it's local people talking about local things, and Enid didn't really have a whole lot of that going on at the time. So I thought that was fun, and I was doing that. And then Todd and I started meeting for lunch more often, and we were always brainstorming about what we could do to make money, what kind of things could we be doing. And that led to 2015. I had put out feelers as Enid Buzz, looking for things to do. And I got contacted by the BOK Center over in Tulsa, and they wanted to know if I wanted to come cover the Garth Brooks press conference. He was coming out of retirement, going back on tour. He was having this big press conference. All the Tulsa and Oklahoma City news stations and all the big radio stations were going to be there. And luckily, I had just gotten on the list, so they invited me to come over, and I said, yeah, that I would be there. And so I asked Todd and some other buddies if they wanted to go over with me and film while I recorded and everything. And then I got another email that said, oh, you might get a chance to interview Garth Brooks. And so I got all excited. So we took all of our equipment over there. I did get to interview Garth Brooks, so he was really my first real interview. We uploaded that to Enid Buzz. You know, it was a short interview. It was like maybe 3 questions. So it wasn't enough to make an episode or anything, but we made a long episode out of the video and uploaded that. And then in 2016, I started a second show with Joe Friday on KNID, and every Friday we just did it by phone, but he would call me, and then I would give everybody an update on what was going on, event and activity-wise in Enid through Enid Buzz on the weekend, and we did that. Whoa. If you guys are watching, I just kicked my stand, which I knew I was going to. But anyway, so I was doing 2 radio shows, KOFM 4 days a week, KNID 1 day a week, and it was all kind of random and event related, but through Enid Buzz. And so again, that kept me kind of interested in the whole morning radio talk thing. And then by the end of 2016, we had stopped doing e-talk, and we weren't doing that anymore. So I was looking for some other stuff to do, and in October of 2016, I've got notes here. If you're watching the video and you see me looking over there, because I got too many notes, I'm trying to remember everything. Okay, so by October of 2016, Todd and I were looking for more things to do, and we went on a ghost hunt at Gaslight Theater. I mean, they planned this whole ghost thing where people kind of locked us in to Gaslight, so at a certain point nobody else could come in, and then I think we stayed till after midnight. But I did Facebook Live while me and Todd were going all through the theater, and so again, that was kind of fun. That was another show episode that we uploaded to Enid Buzz. So we kept getting all these ideas of these shows and things that we could do, and didn't really have anywhere to put them other than on Enid Buzz. And Enid Buzz wasn't really made for that type of thing, because Enid Buzz is kind of more news and events, but that's kind of what we were doing. And then we thought it would be fun to record a radio show looking out a large window in downtown Enid and giving everybody, you know, basically just talk about what was going on in town. Because when we were younger, there had been a radio station on West Broadway that was in this room that stuck out that had this glass. It was all enclosed in glass, and they put a radio station in there, and so you could drive down West Broadway and actually see the DJs in their DJ booth talking on the radio. And we always thought that was cool, so we thought it would be cool to bring that back and have some place in downtown Enid where we could do a radio show. And when I say a radio show, you know, I'm not talking like it would be an all-day radio. This would be just be a morning radio show, and then we could have the office for, you know, the rest of the day to do other things, kind of, you know, run our businesses out of the office. So anyway, that was in the back of our mind. So we were always looking for buildings and offices and stuff like that. And then in November of 2016, I had heard that there was like a huge supermoon coming, and I liked taking pictures, photographs of the moon. And on the night of a supermoon, when it comes up, it's just huge and it's orange. And usually I would drive east of Enid and go out on some farmland where it was really flat, and I would take pictures of the moon coming up there. But I got this wild idea that it would be fun to take photographs of the supermoon from the top of the tallest building in Enid, Oklahoma, which was the Broadway Tower, which was basically empty except for the first floor. There was a guy had bought it and he was going to put a hotel in, and he, I don't know, ran out of money, but he never did. So there was a couple of businesses in the bottom floor, like maybe 2 or 3 businesses, and then a manager of the building that kind of kept people from going upstairs or anything like that. So I got this wild idea that it would be cool to get on the roof of Broadway Tower and take photos as the supermoon came up. So I went in one day and I talked to the manager, who was this girl, and I told her, you know, kind of what I wanted to do. And she said, well, I will talk to the owner and I will let you know. Well, the owner had no problem, and I think probably because I was with Enid Buzz, and he said it was okay. So on the night of the supermoon, Todd and I went, and I think we used the elevator. May have been one of the last times the elevator was used in that building, and it seems like it wasn't real smooth, and I don't think I ever wanted to ride in it again, and I never did. But anyway, we went all the way to the top of the Broadway Tower, 14 stories, I think. I can't remember off the top of my head. Tallest building in Northwest Oklahoma. Went up to the top, basically took photographs of the supermoon. It was really cool. You know, you could see it coming up. And then because we were so high up, you could kind of compare it with some of the buildings that were off in the distance to show how big it was. But while we were doing that, and we were talking to this girl that was managing the building, because the owners were in New York. They didn't even live in Enid. And so we kind of told her that, you know, we had this idea of doing this radio show and needed a place downtown, and thought it would be fun to be in a window where people could drive by. And she said, oh, wow, we've got an empty space downstairs in the Broadway Tower. I'll ask the owner if, you know, that space, and that space was for lease, actually. So she talked to the owner. His name was Johnny, and I think Johnny thought it would be pretty cool to have Enid Buzz in his building. Plus, it was just another business in there to keep things looking active and keep the city off of him, because there was things going on in there. So we came up with a deal. I think the agreement was something like $1 a month, and then we paid for the electricity, our portion of the electricity, and that was it. So we really couldn't turn it down, and there was no contract, there was no lease. We could leave at any time, and he could kick us out at any time. And so, so we bought some tables and created this really cool looking podcasting table. We bought some microphones. Now at that point though, we weren't thinking podcast. At that point it was radio. We were gonna have people sit around this table and we could interview them for our radio show. And so that was kind of the plan. And then in January of 2017, we moved in to the bottom floor of the Broadway Tower, had Enid Buzz and Buzzhead Radio signs put on the front of the building, bought microphones. And by that time, then I had decided to call the radio station Buzzhead Radio because it was kind of related to Enid Buzz. So I bought buzzheadradio.com. I think I formed an LLC because I was kind of doing the whole thing with Todd. And so we formed Buzzhead Radio in January of 2017. And what we were going to do was just interview people and just record audio shows of us talking about what was going on in Enid, and then I was just going to upload them to Enid Buzz. But we were going to try to do it on a regular basis, so it was almost like a radio show. Like we could record them and then I could post them in the morning, and we could almost make a radio show out of it. At that point, we were not doing it daily, but I think we were popping in, several nights and doing random things. And we were doing a lot of interviews at that time. Our first episode was on February 17th, 2017, and it was about King Kong. So Buzzhead Radio was a radio show, and we decided to do an episode on King Kong. So that was our first show, February of 2017. And then our next episode, we had Tammy Wilson come in. She's the girl that had done the ghost hunting at Gaslight Theater, and she's also written a book on ghost hunting in Oklahoma. So we had her on. She was our first guest. We did an episode on ghosts and ghost hunting in Enid, and I think we just posted that on Enid Buzz. Then we did several other random shows. Basically, I can't even remember what. Seems like we did one on John Wilkes Booth because there's a legend of him in Enid. And then we did an episode on growing up in the 70s because I thought that was a cool topic because I loved the memories of growing up in Enid in the 70s. So we did an episode of just talking about what it was like growing up in the 70s. We also did more interviews. We interviewed Emily Faith, which some of you may know who she is. She's gotten fairly famous now, but Emily Faith. We interviewed some guys that had started a big event here in Enid called Summerfest. And so we were basically just trying to get these interviews and putting them on Enid Buzz. And it was just giving me more and bigger content for Enid Buzz. Again, almost like Enid Buzz was a radio, or not a radio, a TV station with kind of a little radio station included. Let's see. That was, and so basically we were just doing random shows. Then the Broadway Tower had a fire. I think it rained really heavy one night, and the water got in the basement, and the building wasn't in the best of shape, which allowed the water to come in, and then the electricity wasn't like probably up to code, so it got wet, started a fire, burned up the electrical, no more power, and it was still pretty cool, so there was no heat, and so we kind of abandoned the studio. We left everything there, but we quit going in because it was too cold and it was dark. And so that was January. That was probably February or March, April, probably March of 2017. and it took a lot longer than they thought and we thought for them to get it fixed. So we were not in the studio for like 2 or 3 months almost. And then they let us back in May of 2017. And at that point, I was still doing the radio show on KOFM. Let's see, but I think the KNID had gotten a new station manager, and he didn't want Joe Friday to be doing his radio show with me, so we stopped that. So I was no longer on KNID, but I was still doing the KOFM show. But because we were getting ready to go heavy on the other stuff, I think I started phasing myself out and wasn't going in. I think I decided to go in maybe 1 day a week at that point on KOFM. And I also had started hearing more about people doing podcasts. Podcasts were starting to really become a big deal in 2017. And so one night, and so my family, the girls were at dance, and Tuesday night was one of their big dance nights, and then Denise had something going on, and then after she got done with her thing, she would go sit at the studio and watch the girls and talk to the dance moms. So I was basically all by myself on Tuesday nights with nobody to eat and nothing to do. So I asked Todd if he wanted to start a podcast and basically have dinner every Tuesday night and then do a podcast. Well, he didn't know what a podcast was, so I explained to him what a podcast was, and that is where we started eating on Tuesdays. And I think at that point we were eating at Boomerang, is where we would meet. And then I think maybe every now and then we'd do Callahan's, but we would kind of flip back and forth. But mainly at Boomerang at that point. And so that was the beginning, May 2017, of our podcasting career. We decided to stop doing Buzzhead Radio. So Buzzhead Radio, as far as like a radio show or trying to make that work as a morning show, was put on hold. And I got to thinking, to do this podcasting thing, we need to have a topic or a subject so it's easier for people to find us, and it's easier for us to know what we're going to talk about every week. So we basically took the 70's, the episode that we did on Buzzhead Radio about the 70's, and just turned that was the topic for the entire 70's Buzz podcast. So I bought the 70'sbuzz.com, got us signed up and everything, and in May 30th, 2017, we recorded our Green Stamp store episode. Plus, that week, we also recorded several other episodes. I think we did Jaws, maybe Farrah Fawcett, I don't know, a couple others. And I think at that point, we were just trying to get some recorded, and we weren't uploading them yet. And then June of 2017, we uploaded the first episode, which was the Green Stamp Store episode, to Spreaker, and we were officially a podcast show, June of 2017. But we had also been recording several other episodes, and we re-recorded our King Kong episode as a 70's Buzz episode. And so we started uploading those kind of just real quick. So I think we got like 4 episodes uploaded like in 1 week just to get some stuff on there. And then there was a pause between the June episodes, and the next ones weren't uploaded until like September. So that was our only, basically from the minute we started the 70's Buzz podcast until today, we really haven't missed a week except for that period. And what happened at that period was there was some stuff going on with the Broadway Tower. We weren't liking it. There was a cigar lounge at the other end of the hallway, and the cigar smoke was making its way down to our studio, and we were getting headaches from smelling the cigar smoke. And so we started looking for another place, and we found a place like on the ninth floor of the Independence Tower, which was super reasonable. So we basically moved the podcasting studio from the Broadway Tower to the no, to Triangle. Sorry, not Independence, to Triangle building. And so that transition of moving everything and all that basically took us a month or two. So we didn't get any new episodes recorded in July or August of 2017, but we started again in September of 2017. And basically started uploading again on September 16th, 2017, and we basically have not missed uploading an episode since, even during COVID. Now, there might have been a couple, just one or two times where we both couldn't record an episode, but we re-uploaded an old episode, or I don't know, did something random. But we have not missed uploading a weekly episode, I don't believe, since September 2017. Let's see, the average podcast. And what we learned was most podcasts fizzle out by episode 7. So we wanted to make sure we had at least 7 episodes so we could pass that mark. And so because of the 3 or 4 that we already had online, we only had to do, by the end of September, we had more than 7 episodes. And we were basically an official functioning podcast. As of February 12th, 2026, which is today, we have uploaded and done 429 70s Buzz podcasts. As of tonight, while I'm recording this with you guys, we are sitting at 998,792 downloads. But like I say, before next week, we will hit 1 million downloads. It's only a little over 1,000 to go, and we get way more than that each week. So we should make that by next 70, and we record the 70s Buzz podcast on Tuesday night. So basically by next Tuesday, we'll let you guys know on that podcast if we made it or not, but we should have made 1 million downloads. As far as episodes, we've covered just about everything, but every time that I think we can't think of anything new, we think of something new. But our most popular episodes are all 70s song episodes. Our biggest countries in order are the United States by far, but then we have Australia, Canada, and the UK, which are kind of grouped together, and they're way far above all the rest of the countries. So basically those are our 4 main countries where we get listeners from. The people listen to us most on Spotify these days. iHeartRadio is second, and then Apple Podcast and Amazon Music come in 3 and 4. And then basically that's it. That's our stats. That's kind of what I was going to tell you. We now we've added going live to the second Tuesday of every month. We will record it as a podcast episode, but we will also be live, so our listeners, and basically most of our listeners have become friends, can interact with us, and they can say stuff to us while we're on air. And so one of these days we probably ought to come up with a Zoom or something where all of our listeners can get in, and we'll all be on video at the same time, and we can do a whole episode with all of our listeners on as well. And we've met some of our listeners in person. We've had Gretchen has come to Enid twice to visit. So we've got Christopher Todd is a regular guest on the Buzzhead Radio. Now there's a whole nother story about Buzzhead Radio, which I'll just go real quick. So we let Buzzhead Radio sit for a while, and then I got a wild hair. Oh, we found out that you could start an online radio station. So I signed up and started an online radio station, which basically ran 24/7. You just had to upload the content. So Todd and I started recording a morning show every morning, and we would upload that to Buzzhead Radio, and it would stream on internet radio. And then eventually we got Natalie to do, she was on the show with us until she went to Main Street Enid. And we did that I think we did it for a year. Even through COVID, we continued to do it, but we just weren't seeing the numbers to be able to get any advertisers. And so after at least a year, I think, of doing it every day, every morning, we would meet and do it, we stopped doing that again, and I shut down the streaming online radio station. And then a little bit later, I thought, well, hey, let's start a second podcast since we're podcasting anyway. So we started Buzzhead Radio as a podcast again, and that's why it's still called Buzzhead Radio. And as of right now, it's just random episodes without any genre or topic. So anyway, there is a celebration of almost 1 million downloads of the 70s Buzz podcast. It will be super duper cool when I reach 1 million downloads on the Curtis Tucker podcast, and I can't do that unless I keep doing a new podcast at least every week. So I think I'm pretty good this year. I think I'm like, this may be the 6th episode, 7th of the year. I think I've made it every week, I think, or basically whenever I started this year. So that's the intent, is to keep going, keep a new episode coming, try to grow the audience. I would love for some feedback for you guys to let me know if there's a certain group of topics you want me to talk about, or anything like that, because that would really help. Hit me up at shags@shaggyduck.com or curtis@curtistucker.com. Don't forget to subscribe on the podcast and the YouTube channel. Feedback. I appreciate you guys. Love you. See ya.